almost sounds like a title of like a kid show when I say it, like, but Kim and Karin!
Good. Okay, let's get started then. We are going to do a like rough portfolio guideline for you guys. So it's going to be about 15 minutes or so, and then we will divide you into groups for the review, and that's for those who actually signed up for having a review of their portfolio. To start off, my name is Kim. I'm a 3D artist, and this is Karin Bruer. We both work at Fast Travel Games. We've been doing that for almost a year together, and that's also the game you can see in the background. A bit about myself. This is all information where you can find me on Twitter, Polycount, and ArtStation. And artists, I kind of, you suspect that you guys hang out on those channels as well, and look at other people's artwork and take part of the community. Feel free to just send me stuff afterward as well if you would like to have further reviews of your portfolios. So I was a student here. I was studying game design 2010 to 2013, and I then went ahead and studied at Future Games 3D art because I decided I wanted to do 3D instead of design. So I was there for a year, working as well at the Solos project during my time as a student, which was a great portfolio piece for me back then because it's released on Steam as well. I then continued on to have my internship at Guerrilla Games, and there I was working with Horizon Zero Dawn. And at that point, I didn't know that this game was under development. I just assumed that I was going to work at Killzone. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that I was going to work at Horizon. I spent like 2 years there in Amsterdam before I moved back to Stockholm, where I then started to work at Fast Travel Games and the current project, Apex Construct, which is a VR game that is going to be released for PlayStation as well. And Karin?
So yes, I'm Karin. As you heard, I also work for Fast Travel Games. I am an art director there now. I studied here at Gotland, and I finished at 2012, I think. And I studied an education that was called computer graphics and animation. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was more into movie kind of thing. But as soon as I got here, I realized that I wanted to make games. So I did that. And I released 7 games, most of them on mobile. And among the most noticeable ones is Leo's Fortune, which I made most of the art for, and also Angry Birds, where I was lead artist on. Let's continue this. All right. You guys have already started making your portfolios, and some of you might not have started. I saw that some of you guys didn't post a portfolio when you signed up for this, and some of you did. So I think that some of you started, some of you haven't. But for those who haven't started yet, there's some important questions you should ask yourself before you even start your portfolio, before you even start making things for your portfolio. And the most important question, of course, is what kind of job do I want? And it's because it's very easy to just like do art, do your assignments here, make art, develop, and then put those things in your portfolio, but they might not fit there. They might not fit the kind of job that you want. So I know it's maybe hard to know right now what you want to do, when you grow up, but you need to start thinking about that. You need to have some sort of goal, so you can tailor your portfolio to that job type. Another good thing to start thinking about is like what studio do I want to work at? And it doesn't have to be like I want to work at this studio. I mean, you might have a dream to work at some specific studio, but it might as well be like, what kind of studio do I want to work at? Do I want to work in AAA? Do I want to work with indie? What interests me? What kind of work environment do I want to have? Because those things are like equally important to like the art you make and the environment that you have making this art. Those are equally important. So, and then of course, yeah, what would be good stepping stones to get there? Because you might, I mean, some people get right into Guerrilla, but not everyone does that. So I mean, you have to think like how, what would be good stepping stones? Like what if I can't get into this really big AAA studio that only hires seniors? Like what can I do in my junior and my junior years to make my chances better to get into this AAA studio when I'm like more senior. So those are the questions. Like you need to stop. You need to start thinking about those right now, and you need to start answering those right now. And one thing that I already mentioned, like that you have to just because you love a certain kind of game, and even if you like that doesn't mean that is that's the best studio for you. You need to consider things, as I said, indie or AAA. Do you want to be a small part in a really big team, or do you want to be a big part in a small team? What kind of role do you want to have? Like if you're set on becoming like an art director in the next couple of years, like then maybe there's some specific types of game studios that you could try to tailor to. And if you have like hardware preferences, like I really want to work with VR, or I really want to work with mobile, like there will be ways you can tailor your portfolio to those kind of studios. So don't just like be blind for like, I really like this game, I want to work at this studio. Like that studio might not be your dream studio. You might not be happy there. So just be aware of that.
Okay, so let's talk about the second part, stock, which is also like the research. So when you're doing a portfolio, you need to do your research properly. Like, what kind of things do other artists have in their portfolios? And you need to look at what kind of things do other juniors have, because it's easy to compare yourself to like people that are seniors or have been working for like 15 years because they make amazing arts, but they also have like probably 15 years more experience than you have. So it's a good thing to actually go and research other people in your position, students and just junior artists in companies, and see what they have in their portfolio, because they are going to be your main competition when you're applying for work. Even if you're applying for an internship or entry level, they are still going to be your like competition, because you're not competing against seniors. Nobody's going to expect you to be as good as they are anyway. So what I like to do is just browse ArtStation, because a really good source, or Polycount, to just look at what other people produce, to get a general idea that this is the quality I need to actually hit before I can actually publish my portfolio or send out an application to make myself look as good or even better than they are, to actually be part of the competition. Because otherwise it's quite easy that you just do a portfolio with the things you have, and then you start applying and wonder, why am I not getting hired? Well, that's because you didn't do your research properly. You're probably lacking something that someone else has in their portfolio. So a general tip then is to go into Moby Games, which is like IMDb, but for gaming. So everyone who's made a game is listed in there. And then you can look up what kind of position they had, because just Googling like junior artist is not really going to give you that much results anyway. So if you can go into Moby Games and you see like, okay, so these are the people that worked for like, say, Horizon. This is like what the position they had. And then you can start searching on ArtStation or Polycount, or just do a general Google search for these people and see what kind of things they have in their portfolio. some of them are going to have a portfolio and some of them aren't. Because when you've been working in the games industry for a while, you already have a job. So it's not that you're going to update your portfolio that frequently. Some people still do because they have as a hobby to continue doing 3D on their free time, which I prompt you to do because it's a good thing to actually develop your skills. But sometimes you're going to end up with having a lot of work to do and not the time to actually develop your skills on your free time. So that's why you're going to end up seeing a lot of people just disappearing on the internet. They don't have a portfolio. But that doesn't mean that they are, in a way, bad. It's just that, well, they have a job already. So go into these sites and just find people and then write them down on a note in Notepad or something and keep them as references when you're creating. They're also good for layouts as well, because a layout structure for a portfolio is also very important, not just the content in there.
Mm-hmm. Like Kim said, the longer someone has worked, the worse is their portfolio because they don't use it anymore. So that's why like sometimes juniors have way better portfolios than like really, really good art directors because they don't use their portfolio. They don't need to use it, and they don't update it anymore. So yeah. And yeah, structure. One thing about portfolios is that you may hear that when you're applying for a job, the only thing that matters is your portfolio, which is true. But the thing is that like when companies are hiring, they get tons of the people that want to that send in their applications, which means that like companies, they don't have that much time to go through portfolios. Even if they want to, they don't have that much time. Sometimes it's just like a couple of seconds. They have to like just to decide on if is this portfolio worth spending 10 minutes or 30 minutes on, or is it just going to the trash bin? No, you can't really do anything about like you can't make them spend more time on your portfolio in this initial phase. But what you can do is that you can make sure that they get a good understanding of your qualities during those 10 seconds. So make it easy for people to look through your stuff. If like I say, like if it's possible, like give them all you got on the first page. Like if you have a first page on your portfolio that is just like text, or it's just it's something random that's just like a personal letter or something. Like that's gonna take a couple of clicks to get away from, and that's going to take time. That's going to spend a couple of those 10 seconds to nothing. So then make sure that like if you can have everything on the first page, do that. If you need to structure it in another way, that you need to have different pages or anything, then you make those easily accessible. Don't make people look for your stuff. Present them to them. And a blog is not a portfolio. Like a timeline-based website is usually a bad idea because then you don't really have any control in with what thing they see the first. Try to be in as much control as possible. Always like sort out stuff. If you have bad stuff in your portfolio, or if you have like okay stuff in your portfolio, and you like because you want to have like a big one, that's going to reflect bad on you because we're going to think that you don't have the taste. We're going to think that you don't understand that this piece is mediocre, even though it's there because you want to show that you have a. That you're like, I can do a lot of different stuff, but it's going to reflect bad on you because we're hiring people for their taste, because we can't teach that. I can teach you a lot of stuff. I can't teach you good taste. And of course, like everyone started out at some point. I don't hold people to like juniors to apply. I don't hold them to like a super high standard, but the least standard I hold is where I started out. And so I mean, don't freak out. Everyone's been where you are now.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper then. Like, we talked about the overall structure, but what do you actually have in your portfolio? So a typical thing that most juniors do is that they go ahead and make something very generic for their portfolio, because you can see a lot of portfolios online have like an AK-47. I've seen that weapon 500 times already. So if you're gonna impress me with that type of weapon, it's gonna be damn good. It's gonna have to be like one of the best I ever seen. Because it doesn't really show that much of like your technical abilities either. Like, it's a very boring piece to look at. If I would then like want to display my weaponry like skills, that I can actually model something else from a blueprint and then deliver this high standard of quality, I would choose something different, another type of weapon that someone haven't made yet, which is then, you know, part of the research. You go and research like, what do other people do? So this is important again, because you don't want to end up having this generic thing. But then again, we do have artists who specialize in different things, like a weapon artist, and we would like to see then that you actually are able to follow the guidelines for making weapons or other hard surface props as well. So it's not like, don't go ahead and make a gun or a barrel or something that is very generic. It's just make it more interesting, make me want to actually look at it more than just 10 seconds or even less, like, oh, it's a AK-47, then close it down. Make me be interested in seeing how you executed the whole like process of making this weapon. Also, try to be a bit more selective when it comes to that. Like, if you're doing weapons, then that's fine to have in there, but then you also state it in your portfolio, like, I am a weapon artist or an aspiring weapon artist, which makes it clear. If you just go ahead and put a weapon in there amongst other things, like an environment or a character, I'm gonna be very confused when I'm looking at your portfolio. Like, what does this person actually want to do and achieve? Like, what kind of things does this person want to actually work with? Also, it tends to be that if you start focusing on different areas, a lot of them, it means that you are not really gaining that skill in one certain area. You're going to be a bit decent in everything rather than being a specialist. And this is important, like, for most when it comes to AAA companies, because there's so many people working there. They're not going to hire you for being a generalist. They're going to hire you because they lack that type of person on that position. So you need to be a specialist. You need to actually be this person who is a weapon specialist or a vehicle, or even like, you know, a character creature specialist. When it comes to indie games, you tend to actually want to have someone who is a bit more of a generalist and knows a bit more. But then it's also very important to not just stuff your portfolio with things like an AK-47 and then just a generic environment. You actually want to appeal to the smaller companies by showing them that you actually can be creative rather than being just generic. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you go ahead and make your own style. It's a good thing to practice different styles. Myself, I have realistic and stylized assets in my portfolio, and that's because I do both. And I've been working on those type of games. But I'm also very selective in what kind of things I'm showing in my portfolio, because I don't want to go and put in the most generic things there just to show that, oh, I can do stylized or I can do realistic things. So try to be creative, like look at concept art. You are allowed to, as a 3D artist, to just model something straight off as from a 2D concept, as long as you credit the artist. Also, 2D artists take inspiration from other artists, but don't just copy. Like, make something out of it, like yourself, your own thing. But everything we create is actually just inspiration from everyone else. Like what you know and what you actually do with your creativity comes from other people that you put together. And also, your portfolio is like only as good as your worst piece. So don't put in stuff there just because, oh, I only have one thing. I rather see one really good thing with a proper breakdown on how you did like normal map baking, if you use the high poly, the texturing and stuff like that, and make a description of that in your portfolio, than you having 5 assets and something in there is very crappy, because that shows that you are as your worst piece. This is what I probably can expect from you on the workplace as well, that you can deliver in high quality, but apparently you can also have these like slopes where you're delivering very, very bad pieces, which goes back to the taste again, that we can teach you taste, but we can actually teach you like skill sets. So it's up to you to be your judge when it comes to your portfolio, but it's also good to speak with other people, like because you can be blind when it comes to your own artwork. Like, oh, you worked on this asset for such a long time, and it feels like this is a really good thing, but it might actually be a very bad, poorly executed thing you have done. And yeah, just remember that there's a lot of factors going into like getting a job position. So if you apply somewhere and you get declined, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're never gonna get a job. It means that you probably have something to work at. And in these cases, you can actually ask the studio, why am I being declined? Sometimes you won't get a response because they're very busy, but hopefully you will get one, and then just like take their advice, because someone has been like taking their time then and actually wrote you a line or two about this is what was lacking, or this is something you need to improve on. And then try to just improve on stuff you think that didn't appeal to the studio that you're applying for, and then try again. Because there's multiple studios out there. You can even go abroad as well. This is not just limited to where you are at the moment. So don't be afraid to reapply. Sometimes it can take hundreds of applications. You don't sometimes get the job on the first try. It's very common to not have that luck. So, and some of you might be very lucky and you do, but then it comes down also to timing. Sometimes it can actually be that your portfolio, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that they're not looking for people at the moment. And then if you really want to go there, then try again later, or ask them if they know if there's going to be any opening soon or within the coming months. And do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for the talk. I have a question regarding, as you said, the various stepping stones in order to get a job at a AAA company. When we look at the current positions that are written out by said AAA companies, regardless of the department, be it art or producing or game design, we often see has to have at least 1, 2, 3 titles of AAA quality having been released. Which means for those positions, of course, you would have already to have been an employee at a AAA company. However, if they only recruit on AAA published titles, it seems like a catch-22.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to approach those applications?
So if you ask yourself then, when you look at the applications and then just do some simple math, would it be doable that you had like 2 titles released when a production can be 5 years? Doesn't that mean then you're already senior? All of these are just like to filter out people. If they would say like, hey, you send us an application, they would get thousands. This is to scare off people to, you know, try at least a little bit harder before they apply. They too tend to, like if it says 3 years of experience, then they do want you to have some experience. When it comes to a title being released, they usually want you to have a title. But then sometimes they can write like at least 2 AAA titles. But if you do the math, it's quite impossible sometimes, because then I would be project jumping. I would actually have to be in the end production on each of the companies, like going in just like the last year, then quit, and then go into another production the last year and then quit, to actually, be able to apply for this position. So I would more see it as guidelines rather than being like, oh, we won't hire you. If you're good, they are going to hire you and look at your portfolio. These are just like lines, like guidelines that please put some effort into your applications, because they don't have time to look at 1,000 like people's applications, because they're not going to find the right people that way.
Exactly. And also like one thing they're looking for is they want that's a way of saying we want AAA quality on your work, and we want you to have been through a whole release cycle. Like we want you to have been through a whole project. That for them to like to say that it's we would at least 2 titles AAA. If you have a portfolio that is AAA quality and you have indie games released, that's the same thing. Like what they're looking for usually is that they don't want someone that's just been an artist but haven't really worked in a game project, and they don't. And that's why that's their way of filtering it out. So there's a couple of studios in Sweden, and there's a lot of studios in the world that has that does kind of, I don't know what it's called. Some call it like AA because they're indies, but they make really high quality work. If you like, that would be a good stepping stone for a AAA. If you can't get a job at a AAA studio at the first time, then like one of those indie studios that does somewhat AAA-ish art, like that would be that would be a good studio to apply for.
I also want to add that AAA doesn't necessarily mean that this is the end goal of your career.
No.
It just means it's a big production. It doesn't mean anything else than big production, tons of people working at it, compared to small production, few people working at it, still producing awesome games. So, like, a lot of people view AAA as like a holy grail, that is like, oh shit, this is the most amazing thing ever. But it's just a regular job you go to and then you make 3D. It's not like, it's very glorified in that sense. So
it's a different kind, like, it's just a different.
It's just a big production. That's how I see it.
And that goes back to the first slide that we had. Like, you have to decide what kind of artist you want to be. Like, if you want to be in do I want to be a small part in a big studio, or do I want to be a big part in a small studio? And that's just personal taste. All right, I think we have just some question left, 1 or 2. I don't know, Marcus, 2? Yeah, 1 or 2. Anyone? You have another one? Nice. Go for it.
So staying in the pure arts parts, you mentioned that in order to tailor our own portfolio, we should compare with work that has been done by others. Now, before joining the education, I did photography and I did have a full client roster. However, some did prefer other photographers of mine, but not necessarily because the quality was better by the standards of, for example, the people I was being hired for, but by that person specifically, be it the marketing director, the art director, whoever chooses those people. And in those cases, it felt comparing our best work to competition of the same industry, but maybe not aiming for the same type of output, was rather demotivating rather than actually pushing us to do better work, because that would have compromised our own style that we were known for.
Okay.
How would you suggest we approach those dilemmas?
So when it comes to like choosing your own style, like if you go and work for, say, Battlefield, they're gonna expect you to produce assets that are for Battlefield. And you're not gonna be the one making decisions about what kind of assets you're producing either. They wanna know that you can actually produce exactly the same thing as everyone else, because they're creating a world that has to look consistent and cohesive. They can't have artists making their own style, because it would look like a mess in there. It wouldn't really sell as a good piece. So this again goes back to like, what kind of studio do you like want to work at, and also do you want to make your own studio? Perhaps that's even better to actually go into freelancing if you have a very specific style you have in mind, and then actually get work opportunities that way rather than going to a AAA company or an indie company.
Yeah. And also, if I understood you correctly, it's like you feel like you don't want to compare yourself to others because they make different kind of things. That's not necessarily better or worse, but it's just different. Is that because there are like portfolios for pretty much everything. There is junior artists that does really artsy, super artsy indie stuff. There's junior artists that does like super AAA stuff. There is people for everything. You need so if you wanna like work at a indie studio, if you're like I really loved Inside, I want to work on that type of game. Of course, you can't look at the people that want to go to Battlefield, like because that doesn't make any sense. But you still have to. The only thing you can take away from other portfolios that isn't really your style is like quality. Like, is this? Am I on the same? Like, can I find some sort of like a red thread on quality here?
And also, when it comes to 3D, like, do I have the same technical skill set? Because that's important as well. Like, can I actually achieve the same things but in a different style, but with the same technical execution? Because a 3D artist is more or less like a technical work than being an like an artist. That's how I view it. I don't view my work as being an artist. I view it as a technical one, even though I do sculpts and texturing, because I am using a lot of references and trying to recreate like real life or stylized, but then I still try to fit it within the same style as everyone else at the company. So
know what you want to do, know what your goals are, and then look for the people that are doing that thing, because there is people like that. Okay,
so this is the end, and we are going to switch the slide, and
we're gonna change room to. Is that the right room?
Yes.
Nice. That's the right room, and we're gonna go there as fast as possible because so we don't run out of time. We divided all of you in two groups. We put the people that we saw had most interest in 3D are going to go with Kim. The people that are more interested in 2D and other stuff, they're going to go with me. If you feel like you've been, we only like judged from your from the sign up page. If you feel like shit, I might not be in the right place, we are going to be here the whole day. We're going to have the room until 1, so you can always come talk to us after we run through all of us, and we can talk more to you. And that's it, I think. And we'll see you in that room.